Alrighty, hello everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Tuesday. So, today, this week, we are going to be talking about the Russian Revolution, one of the most interesting events in history, modern history, I'll say. People are fascinated by this. It's a time of massive social change, specifically in Russia. And the big thing you need to know about the Russian Revolution is that it will fundamentally shake the world order and change how the world will march forward politically, socially, militarily, economically for the next half a century. This is a massively important event. We're going to take a break with World War I just for this week. All right, we're going to talk about it a little bit, but we need to know what's happening with the Russian Revolution so that when we finally get to the Cold War period and World War II, you will know what happened in Russia and what led to the rise of people like Stalin and Gorbachev, and Khrushchev. So, let's start. So, some pre-revolutionary Russian facts. Sorry, I messed up my words. So, Russia was the only true autocracy left in Europe. In 1884, Nicholas II became the last Russian Tsar, which means king, remember. He believed that he was the absolute ruler anointed by God. And something to know about Nicholas was that he was not a very good Tsar, okay? He was not this strong leader that you would think of when you think of a despot or an autocratic ruler, okay? You're not thinking of Nicholas II and going, oh my goodness, he's very powerful, he's strong, he's going to rule Russia with an iron fist. No, he was a very bad Tsar, as is what happens with most leaders before a revolution. So, Tsar Nicholas II is very, very weak. Okay, he's a good family man. However, when it comes to ruling, he's horrible. All right, World War I breaks out. He leaves to go to the front and command from the Russian battlefront. He leaves Tsarina Alexandria in Moscow to continue to rule in his absence. But while he's gone, this man comes around named Rasputin. Okay, Rasputin is this monk from Inner Russia. He is a well-known ladies' man, and he begins to manipulate Alexandra. Okay, he starts to say, Tsarina, your child, your firstborn son, extremely sickly. He was anemic. I can heal him. And Rasputin was widely known to have very powerful healing powers. And so he heals her son. And this is bizarre. This is insane. He starts controlling the royal family. And the Tsarina is kind of just enamored by him. She's like, oh my gosh, he helped my son. I'll give him anything he wants so that he stays healthy. Okay. And so he's brought to St. Petersburg, and Alexandra would do anything for her son, right? She will make sure, she will give up the throne to keep her son alive. And slowly Rasputin starts taking control of the royal family. However, while Nicholas II is on the Russian front, that's him, the Russians get hammered. There's millions of casualties, okay? Because the war is not going well for Russia, people like the Tsar, people like Rasputin, people like Alexandra, they're going to fall in terms of popularity. People are going to start to hate them. Okay, you're horrible rulers. Millions of us are dying. We're starving. Then we know that the war happens from 1914 to 1918. And because Russia is so unpopular, Rasputin is assassinated. It takes 4 shots to the head until he's actually killed. Okay? He's shot once. They drag his body away. They think he's dead. He wakes up. They shoot him again. Continue to move his body. He wakes up again. They shoot him again. And they say, oh my God, this guy won't die. He sits up and he goes, oh, I don't know exactly what he said, but that's the 3rd time he survived. So then they say, you know what? We're going to make sure this guy never survives. We're going to tie him up, put weights on him, and throw him in the river, and shoot him again. So they throw Rasputin in the river after they shot him again, and that is the end of our boy. All right, Rasputin is gone. Alexandra's left, pretty exposed with Nicholas on the front still. And so massive revolts start spreading, okay? Russia's serfs, we remember what a serf is, right? It's a peasant, okay? The serfs comprised most of the Russian population, okay? We talked about this when we talked about the despots. Russia was divided into two groups, the very rich and the extremely poor, which is very normal for autocratic European governments at this time and societies. And in exchange, and how a serf's life would work, just to give you a little bit of a idea. In exchange for working long hours for a landlord, a serf received a small log hut, a tiny piece of land, and a few animals. Most of the serf's crops went to pay the landlord's taxes. Anyone who resisted the rules was beaten with a leather and wire whip. Many tried to escape, but few succeeded. So serfs were bound to the land. Okay, they were bound to whatever lord or landlord controlled them. Okay, whoever owned that land, by extension, owned you as a serf. Okay, conditions were horrible. There was never enough to eat. You were always working so hard and getting so little in return. Okay, just like we saw with France, people are going to start to get unhappy. People are going to start to realize they're being oppressed. People are going to get furious, and they're going to start fighting back. This is a very, very old picture of the serfs. Okay, they look very much like peasants would look, the stereotypical hooded woman, old woman, the farmer people, the guy with the mustache, all right, not very high fashion, white corduroys, aprons on, very much what you'd think of a peasant. And so we talked about Bloody Sunday in 1905. Russia lost the war with Japan, that, remember, Russo-Japanese War. Right, this angered the serfs and workers because their family members were forced to fight in a war they didn't want to be part of. All right, they're told you have to go to war for the glory of Russia and the glory of the Tsar, when really, we'd usually be fine with sending our people to fight in the war. But we lost. And not only did we lose, we lost to Japan, an Asian country. All right, a country not comprised of Caucasian people. Okay? This so-called lower race of people, that's what they were thinking, very racist. We lost to them. How could the great Russia lose? And so, on January 22nd, thousands of people marched on the Winter Palace to ask Tsar Nicholas for reforms. The Tsar isn't even there. Okay, he's still on the front. And he gets word of this from his soldiers, and allegedly he told them to clear the crowd out and fire on the crowd. Okay, the palace troops shot the people in the crowd, and it became known as Bloody Sunday. I'm not quite sure if I personally think that the Tsar said, clear them out by any means necessary. I feel like it's very much the Boston Massacre of Bloody Sunday. Remember that when you move into US 1 next year. Okay, and so this is the biggest spark for the revolution. The revolution wouldn't take place for another decade. However, this is when all of the civil unrest occurs. This is when the riots start. Okay, we could see the peasants all the way at the top. They're charging forward. They're protesting. We see the line of Russian soldiers getting ready to fire with their guns drawn. And so, while Russia's at war, they're not doing well. Millions of soldiers are killed and wounded. People are missing. People are suffering severe food shortages, both at home and on the front. And remember what I said when we were talking about the war last week? When the Russians went to fight, sometimes they didn't even have weapons. Sometimes they weren't even fully clothed. Germany was correct in that it would take a long time for Russia to mobilize, but that didn't stop Russia from just sending people to start fighting. Okay, and because of this lack of preparedness, the Russian people are going to be slaughtered. Okay, this is a very gruesome picture of a starving children, a family that's just in shambles from the war, starving from a lack of support from their Russian government. All right, they're just depleted. They look hopeless. They're exhausted. They're miserable. They're dying. And because of this, people get very unhappy. Like we were saying, they're unhappy with Rasputin. They're unhappy with the Tsar. They're unhappy with Alexandra. But Tsar Nicholas II, again, not a great Tsar, ignores the signs of the people. He ignores the signs that the people are unhappy. He said, oh, they love me, I'm on the front, I'm fighting, they support me. When really, the people saw him as a weak man, and they saw him as being this far-off ruler who's on the Western Front fighting the Germans, when really Alexandra and Rasputin are the ones who are ruling us right now. Okay, he's a remote ruler, right? He didn't see the changes that were needed in the way that his country was being run. He didn't see that the serfs were so miserable. And so, numerous Soviets, or workers, thus began to appear on the scene. Okay, this is a very satirical political cartoon of the Tsar getting hit on the head with the hammer of revolution. Okay, and finally we get into the actual revolution, the meat of it. In early 1917, there were riots in the streets. Women, factory workers, and farmers demanded a change. These groups greatly outnumbered the police and military, and the military could not keep the peace. Okay, so while the military is greatly split and most of them are fighting on the Western Front, okay, the police and whatever troops were left behind are unable to quell the uprisings, unable to put down the revolts. Okay, and there's going to be several stages in over the course of this war. Okay, there's going to be several stages over the course of the revolution, certainly. And by the end of World War I, or by the time Russia pulled out of the war, because remember, they left before the war ended, Tsar Nicholas is going to be forced to give up his throne. Okay, a weaker government would take over, the Tsar and his family would be captured. Okay, so we're going to put a pin in the Tsar for a minute. This is the Romanovs, that's the Tsar and Tsarina right there, Nicholas II and Alexandra, the anemic son sitting in the front, the one on his father's leg. This is right after his coronation. But before he's captured, before he abdicates the throne, revolution spreads across the country. Okay? In response to the Bloody Sunday, the Duma will be created. The Duma is the Russian Congress. Okay? Nicholas is going to say, well, they want change, I'll give them some change. Let's make a Congress. Excuse me. So he's going to make the Duma. He's going to say, yes, this Duma, it'll act as a parliament, but it really was very weak. Okay? And there were 3 attempts to make this Duma work, but each was too radical and still favored only the wealthiest Russians. And in the end, there was just too many problems. The Duma, which is the Russian Congress, had failed. And now it's time for the big revolution. Okay? Remember, the Tsar is still in charge. He still has the Duma. Okay, he's still on the front. Rasputin's dead. Alexandra is very weak right now and exposed. This is a picture of the Duma. Okay, the Duma building where they would vote and conduct themselves whenever they could. And then we get our boy, Vladimir Lenin. Okay, not to be confused with John Lennon, the guy who was assassinated. Okay, remember the Beatle, John Lennon. Ask your parents if you don't. Vladimir Lenin, though, in 1917, realized that the Duma and the Tsar was so weak. Okay? He takes over. He overthrows the government. They charge the Winter Palace. Lenin pushes the weak government aside, and the communists take control of Russia. Tsar Nicholas and his family were executed. Okay, they were taken into the basement after they're being under house arrest and abdicating. They're taken into the basement, and they're mowed down by machine guns. In 1922, Lenin would reorganize the country and name it the Soviet Union. Okay, the reason they changed it was Russia joined with Belarus, Armenia, Georgia, and the Ukraine to make one massive, massive country. Not that Russia wasn't already massive enough. Okay, so Vladimir Lenin is in control. Okay, he is the man who bastardizes communism. He takes communism and he changes it. He says, Karl Marx thought this, but this is how we're going to make it practical. We're going to militarize it, and we're going to make it authoritarian. This is him. He's very iconic. Okay, his mustache and his little beard with his very big forehead. Okay, very brilliant man. Here he is giving a speech. Okay, this is right after he took control. And then we get into our fun Russian Civil War. Okay, the Russian Civil War is the most important part of the Russian Revolution. The Russian Civil War is what cements Lenin, Stalin, and Trotsky's power hold over the government. So, we're going to see two sides to this war, the Reds and the Whites. The Reds are the Bolsheviks, okay? That's Lenin's party. Lenin is, he's the leader of the communists. His second right-hand men are Trotsky, who's a genius, and Stalin, who's a military genius. They are going to support him. They are all communists. Okay, the Bolsheviks are the Reds, they're communists, and they're led by Lenin, Stalin, and Trotsky. Okay, specifically Lenin. They are going to be in control of large parts of Russia, and the Whites are going to start attacking. This would be the Allied forces who were fighting in World War I. Okay, this would be the Serbians and anyone else who opposed the Bolsheviks. The Allies, the Europeans, so the French, the British, the Americans, they would start to invade parts of Russia to help the Whites. They wanted to end the Russian Revolution. They wanted the Tsar to be put back in control. They said the communists are bad. We need to put the Tsar back in control. But if you're a Russian citizen, does this really look good that foreign countries are coming in and saying, hey, go back to this oppressive system that didn't work and made you suffer? Okay, you haven't tried the communist system yet. You don't know what Lenin, Stalin, and Trotsky are going to do. Of course, in hindsight now, we know that they were murderous psychopaths. However, back then, they said, wow, we've got these people who, for the most part, aren't even Russian, coming in and telling us how to run our government. We would see attacks from Serbians in the southeast, the Ukrainians in the west, revolts from Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. I can never say that country. In the southwest, okay? All of these big countries are going to start charging in with the help of the Allied forces. Okay, the Allies are never going to shoot a single bullet. However, they will be there to support the Whites. So, the Bolsheviks faced armed oppositions on many sides. They're led by Trotsky, okay? Militarily and politically, Lenin is going to be at the top. He's in charge. He's the man who's in control of everything. But he's going to say, Trotsky, use your genius and your organizational skills to make our army awesome and to make them victorious. Trotsky, the brilliant genius mastermind he is able to take on all of the Whites. He's able to win the war. Okay, spoiler alert, Lenin and Stalin win. Okay, Trotsky, though, is instrumental in stopping a Ukrainian march that were almost on the brink of invading Moscow. Okay, they're marching from the west. Okay, they're the closest one to the rest of Europe. They're marching into Moscow to take down Lenin. But their advance is halted because of Trotsky. And 3 years since the revolution in 1921, the Ukraine is recaptured. Okay, the Whites are defeated formally and surrender. The independent governments that had been created in Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan are defeated. The Bolsheviks are in control of Russia, and then the royal family is executed. I know we talked about the royal family being executed before, but there's so many things happening at once that it wouldn't make sense for me to talk about the revolution and not the royal family, and then only the royal family and revolution. So to make it easier, we just split it up. Okay? This is the most important slide. This is the slide that you should take a picture of, print out, and put under your pillow at night. The consequences of the revolution and the Civil War are that Lenin and the communists take power in Russia. So Lenin's at the top. His two right-hand men are Stalin and Trotsky. This would be the first communist country in history. We've never had a country that said, yes, we are communists or we are socialists. The Tsar and Tsarina are overthrown and executed. That's an end to the autocracy in Europe. Stalin is named as general secretary, okay, which is basically like, I don't know the equivalent to the United States, but kind of like the Secretary of Defense, Interior, and State all mixed into one. He's in charge of Russia, of course, and makes Russia operate day to day. The Allies become adversaries of Russia, so obviously Lenin and Stalin are not going to look too kindly on the West trying to intervene and stop their movements and revolutions. And this is going to put into motion, like I said in the beginning, a series of events that will fundamentally shape the politics for the next half a century. This is going to change the world. This is one of the most important events in the 20th century. Okay, make sure you have your notes written down. Make sure you have all your comments and questions written down. Submit those, and I will talk to you tomorrow on the live chat. I'll post that time later. All right, remember that all of this online stuff, you still have to adhere to the tech policies that you signed in the beginning of the year. You must still adhere to the code of conduct. All of these things you have to keep in mind. But for me, all I need from you right now, submit your notes, comments, and questions, and get ready for the live chat tomorrow. Have a lovely night.